Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are back again with our episode, which is A Day in the Life of an Entrepreneur. And this time, I have a very, very, very special person whom I wanted to get on this episode for a very long time, who's Guy Podjarny. He is a serial entrepreneur and he's been my super boss, and I've learned a lot from him. So, what I'll do is I'll bring him on the session and we'll speak to him about his journey and what he's been doing. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Vandana. Glad to be on here.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this A Day in the Life of an Entrepreneur. You're one person who's inspired all of us at Snyk, and not just at Snyk, but about your journey, what you've done. So, we would want to know about how exactly you started off in IT, the companies you founded, and now you're working for, you have actually founded Tessl. So, we want to know about your journey.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I think we learn from people that happen to sort of do the journey before us. So I'm kind of very quickly born and raised in Israel. Started my career after some parts of the Israeli cyber parts of the Israeli army. Went into one of the cyber companies in Israel, and that got acquired by a Canadian company. So I moved to Canada. Not really founding, but still a bit of a seizing of a moment in which I had an opportunity to take a role in the acquiring company, where the role was in Ottawa, Canada, which I couldn't really place on a map when I took it. Moved there with my freshly wed wife, and IBM acquired that company a few years later. So that was kind of my tee up pre starting to found my own companies. And then I left IBM and I founded a company called Blaze, which made websites faster. It was kind of like an inline compiler for web pages. And that was, we could talk a little bit about that, kind of the joys and the pains of that point, but I definitely didn't really know what I was doing, but managed to get the company off the ground and sold it to Akamai after a fairly short period. Within 2 years, sold it to Akamai. So it was sort of a successful exit. It put me in a different sort of financial position for my life, and I got to be CTO at Akamai for about half of Akamai for the web performance business at Akamai. So I did that for a few years and moved with Akamai to the UK in 2014. After which I got the itch to do it again. Felt like I sort of finished maybe a bit prematurely the journey at Blaze. Wanted to do something big. Wanted to try on a CEO role. I was CTO at Blaze, and that was the inception of Snyk. And so I left Akamai, founded Snyk. Snyk did quite well. We could talk a little bit about the Snyk journey. It wasn't like 2 years in. It felt very much like it might not happen, it might collapse, but that was an interesting journey and growth. And once we took off, I think over the course of almost 9 years now at Snyk, incredible journey. Clearly worked well, learned a ton, grew with the company, and over the last year or so within Snyk, I was starting to wonder, what do I want to do next? Do I continue to scale and grow in Snyk as an operator, or what else? We have a charity we started with the family. I do some angel investing, so I learned a lot there. But also I increasingly got lured into ideas in the world of AI, and eventually kind of came to accept that what I want to do is I want to found another company. And so I moved to a board-only role at Snyk. I'm still very involved and supportive there, but want to operate in a new company, Tessl. I guess I didn't say that Snyk is a developer security company looking to kind of get security embedded into software development. And at Tessl, what we're trying to do is reimagine software development for the era of AI. We think AI will transform software development. It wouldn't just be a user experience layer that generates some code per your text. It's actually a different way of developing software that is anchored in specs and what the application should do versus the implementation of it. And so we think there's a new paradigm here, which was exciting to me and lured me in to go off and found that. So since March of this year, I've that's been my focus.
Oh, congratulations, Guy, for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be back at it, back at the early
Yeah.
stages.
And we're all looking forward to know more about it. And now, while you've worn these many hats, you've been a founder, you've been actually, you've founded multiple companies, you've been an advisor, and now you're still a board member at Snyk, and you are actually managing Tessl as well. So how does your typical day looks like? Because time management is something which is very critical. At the same time, it's very tricky as well. So how do you balance out that when it comes to your segregation with time, or your investment of time in different things that you're doing?
Yeah, time management is hard, and time is the most precious asset, really. Both kind of your time on this planet and how do you move something forward, and your time in a given day, time between family and work. I don't have exact rules. I'm not like a great, like very sort of systemized. Hey, I have these techniques. I write these things down on Sunday and do them on Monday. Those never worked for me. But I have a few kind of boundaries that I try to define. So first of all is maybe the gap with the family, and so I don't think that when you're founding a company, it means you need to sacrifice your life for it. I have two amazing children. I've got a great relationship with my wife, and you have to invest in that. You have to make time for that. And so I would work, for instance, hard during the day, but I will have breakfast with my kids and I will leave the office to have dinner with my kids. And yes, maybe after dinner, I will be back at my computer and my work for, till midnight. But I will spend that time with them. I took vacations every year. We will set up some 2-week vacation. We're going to go together. And so I think to be able to kind of maintain your life, you have to set some boundaries and say, okay, these are hard lines. I would travel a fair bit. My rules are, no back-to-back trips and no over-the-weekend trips. And so as long as I traveled only during the work week and I did not travel the week after, it meant I was mostly home, not mostly away. And whatever, once or twice a year, you have to break that rule because something really justifies it. But generally, that is the rule, and that works well for me. In the day-to-day, the really the most important thing is to know what is the most important thing, is to understand amidst your priorities, what are the things that have to happen now, and to allow a few other things to fall through because of that. And because if you narrow yourself when you're founding a company, you wear many hats, and you do have to keep the some things are critical. They're important, administration with a bank or some filing or some legal paperwork with an employee. Like, you have to do these things, and so they might not be the most fun part of the journey, but as long as at the beginning you have to be the one doing them, so you have to be methodical and get those out of the way. But for anything that is more time consuming, you have to have a constant sense of what is the most important thing, or what are the 2 or 3 most important things on your queue, to make sure you give them time to do them correctly. For me, in the early stages, a lot of it was on product, on the definition of what it is that we're building, and on team and hiring. And so, for instance, at Tessl, first couple of months were very much like I got a few good people into the team, and we worked a lot on product definition. And then I went to recruiter mode, and the next sort of 2-3 months, I was very much interviewing, and I think I did 50 interviews over the course of a month, and really kind of invest and make sure that you do that part well. And then over time, and maybe this isn't a time management piece per se, but to me it's critical, is I always try to work myself out of a job. So as soon as there's a task that I do that is somewhat repetitive, that I now have more clarity on, this just needs to be done, assuming financing supports it, then you want to try and hand that off to someone else. Part of it is just freeing yourself up to always level up. And that worked all the way through the Snyk journey as well. Like, it was always around what is it that you can hand off to others. And part of it is about freeing yourself up. And part of it is around the fact that some of these tasks might be kind of chores to you at some point. They become not a thing that you relish in doing. You just have to doing it. They might not give you the sense of fulfillment, and they might actually be a growth opportunity for someone else. And so seeking those out and always um, uh, it's not really like giving away your Legos. There's this analogy of like, sort of pass on your control, but finding ways to be able to delegate, to be able to pass on responsibilities is critical for you to grow.
I think that's a very good point because some people actually want to hold on to something, but you've made a very interesting point wherein you have to level up. Because if it's a repetitive task, somebody else can do it, and you can think about new ideas and new opportunities.
And I think there's maybe two versions of that. One is horizontal moves, and the other is when you move upwards. And so for horizontal moves, when then maybe sometimes it's just like what is right for the company, what is right for your growth, and can you hand off a responsibility for someone else to take on? And there's maybe a team playing element to that. But I think very common when you found a company is that there's constantly indeed that sort of level up. When you level up, it's not that necessarily you are doing the job better than someone else, but oftentimes the problem is a sense of control. It's like, well, but I want this to be done right, and I don't really know how to define what right is, and therefore I have a hard time with anybody else doing it. I feel like I need to scrutinize them, I need to micromanage them to know it, and I might as well be doing it myself. And so delegation is a very important skill to develop, which is asking yourself, what is it that really worries you about passing this on? And what type of insights or controls can you have to be able to see, to observe that it is being done correctly? And when you have that understanding, that it's easier for you to say, okay, now who is a good person to do this, whether they come with the right skills, whether this will be an exciting new challenge for them, and they have the right talent, and then you sort of pass that on. But I think as long as the kind of the core to be able to do that successfully is to figure out for yourself what are the questions, what are the indicators that you would have to do it. And then I guess alongside that, there's delegation that is sheer capacity building, in which case you say, well, I trust that this will be done sufficiently well. And if it wasn't done sufficiently well, it is not critical. It's like we will manage, but it would free me up to do these other things. And so that's very true for corporate functions, for instance, at the beginning. And depending on your phase, sometimes you're like I care a lot about how much does a company spend, and so I manage the budget well. But at the same time, you're not wise if you're spending all your time trying to turn a whatever it is $500 bill into a $300 bill when you've raised some tens of millions of dollars and you're trying to do something useful with them. So sometimes it's also choosing what it is that you optimize.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And now that brings me to a point wherein you've been doing so much and you've delegated things, you've handed over your companies as well. There are different ideas in all the three companies, whether it's Blaze, whether it's Snyk, whether it's Tessl. So how exactly you come up to a point that this is the idea that I want to work on? Because there are tons of ideas, but till the time it becomes a success or it becomes actionable, it is still an idea. So
Yeah,
how do you handle that?
I think ideas are slightly overrated. So first of all, in two of my companies, Tessl maybe is the exception. I made the decision to found a company first and chose the idea after. And I think there is an important step that you make when you say, I want to try and found a company. I want to be a founder. It's a significant step. It implies you're sort of you're taking the leap, right? You're leaving maybe the safety. I think you can make that type of decision while still employed and make some progress while you're still working. But it's hard to make a lot of progress. Like oftentimes you need to free your mind. Maybe if you're in a job that you don't care about, but typically that doesn't go hand in hand with someone who would found a company. And so oftentimes you need to take that leap and say, okay, I'm gonna lose some financial safety here and take that leap. And that's a hard step because you have to immerse yourself in a domain. When you're in that mode now and you've chosen to decide it, To me, first um, you have to be solving a real problem, and that it needs to be a problem that you can get excited by. It doesn't need to be your identity. My career started in security and then went to web performance and then went back to security, but more closer to dev. And now I'm in dev and AI. It's not that it's one passion that drove the whole time, but in every one of these steps, I am passionate. I do care about performance and the value and web performance and what it would do. And I do care about security and making the world safer. And so you have to care about it, and you have to solve a problem, not just innovate for technology's sake. I think that's very common for technical founders, which is they fall in love with a technology, with a solution. And I like to tell founders that nobody cares about your product. They care about the problem that you're solving for them. And so you have to really understand, why is it that you are solving this problem better? It's okay for a new technology to be the enabler that lets you solve it better. In fact, that is very common, but you have to understand what is the problem that you're solving. So if you have a problem and you're passionate about it, the next question is just, is it a big enough problem? And is it a problem that will get stronger over the years versus weaker? Because that's another common case um, for founders, is that they see a temporary gap. Some new technology comes along, containers come on the scene, or now with AI, some things are not being provided by the ChatGPT UI, and they see the problem. They say, "Hey, I can build that," and they go off and they address that problem. But this problem is very short-lived. It will diminish in value over time, and it's quite likely that if it is valuable, the relevant platforms will expand to cover it. And so you always, as a startup, want to anchor in the future. You want to think, in 5 years' time, will this problem be greater or lesser? And you want to focus on things that are going to be greater, because otherwise, like, if you're lucky, then in 5 years' time you have like a tiny fraction of the market that addresses that problem, and that's if you're lucky, if it went well. And so if at that time that problem is already diminishing in importance, you're not going to go anywhere. And as we said earlier, time is your most precious asset. And to me, the worst case scenario with startups isn't crashing and burning. The worst case scenario is getting to a company that does $1, $2, $3 million a year, $5 million a year, and at this point is growing at like a 10, 20% rate. And you're stuck. You built something that is valuable enough that you can just easily walk away from, but that's not really what you signed up for. You're trying to build something that is big. So I guess I'm rambling here a little bit, but I look for problems that I'm passionate about, that I think I have a disruptive sort of idea of how to address them. That I think this problem and the nature of the solution that I am proposing will be more important, more relevant in 5 years' time. So it's anchored in the future. And then I guess the last thing I would say, and this one is a little bit of a level up. It's something that I don't think I considered up until Tessl as much at the founding level, is thinking about powers. And so, like, first and foremost, you have to have a good working solution that addresses a real problem. But then when you look, for instance, at Snyk's journey, we got to a place in which, okay, we're now well established and we're continuing to build great products, we're continuing to grow. And you start, you have to appreciate that not every step will be successful, right? Like, not every choice that you've made, product that you've launched will have been the right one, or you might not have executed to it. And power is really, to me, the ability to kind of get forgiveness a little bit from the market. What are the unfair advantages you accumulate over that time that help keep your success sustainable, right? Help you differentiate sustainably. So it could be a network effect. It could be some element of scale economies. It could be some data asset that you've built that allow you to do the job better than competitors, even though maybe you misstepped in one point or the other, allowing you to catch your balance and come back. If you don't catch your balance, if you keep misstepping, at some point you're still going to fade. So I think some ideas have more potential for power than others, especially in the AI space. There are many ideas that are just short-lived technology innovations that if proven valuable, can be copied. And so you have to think about these things. I like Hamilton Helmer's Seven Powers book to enumerate them, but it doesn't have to be one of those. It's just about thinking about what would be the sustainable reality you'll be in.
Yeah, I think that's very, very amazing to know about it. That you have to know that how it's going to be done in 5 years, whether your idea can work or not. And the important point you said that if it's sustainable, that people might copy as well. So how are you going to balance that? How are you going to handle that?
But they're in order of priority. I mean, I think I'd say first you have to choose you want to found a company, because founding a company is amazing and it is terrible. It is a journey of highs and lows. The reason I'm back to it is because you kind of forget over time the lows and you remember the highs. And I believe that satisfaction comes out of struggle. You know, you have to put yourself in a place in which you're struggling, you're working hard to do something, and that you're able to fail. And from there will come the opportunity to also get the satisfaction for achieving something great. And so first you have to choose to find something, then you have to find a problem that is real and that you're passionate about solving, and then you have to think about that problem uh, uh, played forward and sort of say, well, where would it be? I think you can actually end there. If you believe here that this is correct, then you can go off and you can found a company based on that path. I think the sort of the cherry on top is if you think about, as I build this company, what type of sustainable differentiation am I building? But if you've built something that is useful, oftentimes there are paths for you, even if it ends up being a sale of a company, or you can evolve powers later. You don't have to figure everything out up front.
Right. And on that, on those lines itself, if you have to give uh, some piece of advice or your um, words of wisdom, what will be for the person who's actually starting their journey now? The person wants to, for example, like if I want to be an entrepreneur someday, and you mentioned that choose your priority, but what would be three lessons that you want to inculcate in me that I should keep in mind when I'm starting off?
It's a tough journey, and it's best experienced with co-founders. Like a startup is a I'll say two things that are maybe like a little bit sound contradictory, which is you should seek out co-founders, but you should be very picky about who are your co-founders, because startup journeys are full of these highs and lows, as I mentioned,
Mhm.
and and they're amazing, but they're very emotional at times, and there are many times in which you doubt yourself, or you have problems with people on the team, or and so you have to like having partners for the journey is very important. The only thing worse than not having partners for the journey is having the wrong partners for the journey. And so I think the sort of the marriage analogy is fairly apt, which is you can separate from a founder afterwards, but it is a painful process. So I think try to find a partner. I think many types of partnerships work. If one is a business oriented one is a tech oriented one, that's okay. If both are tech oriented, but one is interested in maybe taking on more business, the best case is when they're complementary. But I think try to find co-founders. Um, I think so I think problem. Make sure you're solving a problem, not just excited about the technology. Find co-founders for the journey. Um, and I guess a lot of people are afraid of not having the skills. How can I be CEO? I've never been CEO. How can I? And yes, it is useful to have skills when you come along and having some experience in the industry. But the best way to learn how to found a company is to found a company. Like you learn very, very quickly. You should seek out mentors and advisors, and some of your investors could be that as you build out to help you learn those. And you should lean into your strengths and try to get support for the areas that you don't know. But nobody comes into founding a company knowing all there is to know about running that business, or maybe when you're sort of in later stages. I sort of feel like I know a little bit more now in my third run, but it's more about choosing to go for it. It's more about seeking kind of advice and support for the areas that you don't know and the areas you do, because you're never perfect at those decisions. than it is about having credentials, right, and having a proven track record for all of these different facets that you would need to build a product.
Right. Now, yeah. Now you've built a product, you've an idea, you've got advisors. At what stage you plan to get an investor, or you plan not to get an investor?
It's um, it's a very case by case decision. I'd sort of say um, uh, first there's a question about when, like, oh, okay, let me kind of organize my thoughts a second. First, you need to think about whether you should get an investor or not. And so the drivers there are uh, one, is this a venture business? So is this something that has the potential of becoming something very, very big, which is what venture investors are looking for? Or is it just something valuable that can become kind of profitable and give you get good sort of cash flows, but it might not become monstrous? If it's the latter, then getting venture investors can actually get you down kind of the wrong path, because they would expect and drive the company to paths that might not be right for it, and you might be stuck with it. Um, if it is an idea that you think has, sort of a big picture elements to it, then you can seek investors. And then the question is, when do you seek those investors? I think a lot of it comes down to when you can get the right investors. So what's wrong about like the mistakes that you might make are getting an investor that is really not relevant to your domain. Maybe they're not even from the venture space or from the tech space. They might not be. Well, that's assuming, of course, you're sort of doing a tech venture. Maybe they are. They're a consumer focused investor, and you're trying to do a business to business. So I would avoid that. I would sort of say those are not sort of the investors you want, and you're better off trying to kind of drag along a bit more. Similarly, you don't want to accept terms that are problematic. Those could really ruin your path. And you should remember that, like I mentioned, that founders are like a wedding, but investors are almost like children. Like, you can't fire them. Once it started, it's there. And that relationship can basically not really be severed. And so children is probably not the apt analogy, but it is like a not undoable, like it is with founders. So you really want to make sure that it's someone that you have sort of trust with, that the terms are correct on it. So I'd say proficiency and the terms. And then I guess the last one that is most practical is just when you can. Like, when is it that you have enough credibility to investment from an investor perspective is all about risk management. So they're trying to say, what is the upside and what is the downside? And when you come with proven track record in a specific domain and you're building a solution within that domain, then you might actually have enough credibility to go off and raise money before you've written a line of code or demonstrated anything. But when you are building something more fresh, or if you're out of college and you don't have industry experience, then oftentimes you will need to have built something. You would need to have shown it to people to help get the investors' kind of risk acceptance to a low enough level. I wouldn't be terribly worried about dilution. It needs to be within reason. You can't go off and give half of your company for $500,000, at the beginning. If you do that, then you wouldn't have the longevity to take it any sort of distance. But at the same time, it's more important to get the right person on board, to get the right terms and conditions, and to go along for the journey with them, than it is to sort of minimize those percent. That's true for investors, and it's true for employees. It's a
Yeah,
bit of a
I
rambling answer here. Sorry if I.
no, 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 no. They were lovely, and especially I love your analogy with investors and co-founders, and it's easier to understand and it's easier to follow across as well, because you need to make the right decisions at the right time, or you will be in a situation uh, where you cannot move forward. but you cannot go back as well.
Yeah.
So it's like you're stuck. I think
And
that's it's wonderful.
And I think that type of challenge of like, I want to make progress right now and I don't have the right person available to me is something that continues all along. Like you want to hire this new engineer for this team. You want to get this, project done and you need engineering power and they're good enough and you hire them. Although you've previously said that you would only hire top tier people. It's like, well, time pressures are real. I think for employees, like when you encounter that situation, then you have to think about how reversible that is. That's true for product decisions. It's always, is this a one-way door or two-way door? And so they cascade. Investors, you can't undo. Founders, very painful to undo. Employees, much more manageable to undo. Not what you want to do, but a part of the business life. So yeah, you have to think about those.
Right. Our conversation has been amazing, and trust me, you're one person whom I wanted to discuss about these things for a very long time. And I'm glad I got the courage to ask you, and you said yes in the first go itself. I'm honored.
I'm happy to pay it forward a little bit. I've learned a lot from podcasts and videos and such as I was building my companies, and I think we're humans. We learn from stories, and so it's useful to hear those. And I still listen to many of them. I find they always have some grain of insight that I take with me.
Right. In the end, is there something that you want to leave our audience with, or you want to share it with them, or maybe a podcast that they should definitely take a look at?
I think so. I guess kind of an easy one is like my own. So we started a new podcast on with Tessl called the AI Native Dev podcast. I had the secure developer at that I started at the beginning of Snyk to talk about how to bring people together, those who are trying to get security built into development. So similarly, in the AI Native Dev, I'm talking to all sorts of smart people with perspectives about the future of software development. What would it look like? Some existing tool vendors, some just smart people that have been building with it. So check it out, the AI Native Dev. And I think maybe like the word of um, about maybe like a visionary lens or like an attempt to look at where the world is going from an AI perspective is, I think a lot of people are looking now to found things in the context of AI. And I think founding a company right now that is like an AI powered tool is actually more risky than founding a startup in regular mode because the landscape is changing faster. The incumbents are investing more and moving faster than before. And at the same time, it is clearly disruptive. It's a paradigm shift, and those are the best opportunities to unseat existing incumbents, to really try something entirely new, like the internet. Like mobile is smaller, actually. That maybe like computing.
Mm.
And so, I guess what I would encourage people thinking about building something in this space is to, if you're going to go for it, I think it's better to go far, to go big, to think about what would be the transformation that needs to happen in an industry, in a space, and one that is hard for the existing players in it to accept because it takes away some of their power. It's like the Blockbuster Netflix. So Blockbuster already had all their prime real estate in all these different stores. They didn't want to believe that DVD by mail or DVD streaming will succeed. So what's the example of that in the domain that you're looking, and try to think about what is the real transformation and focus on leading that those are the opportunities to really found something in the AI land that isn't just a feature that eventually gets absorbed into some platform, but actually swing for the fences and say, well, this would be the new world, and build that out. You're still not going to be in a great statistical place. I mean, I think that's always true for starting a company. But if you succeed, you get a chance to be truly big and impactful.
Right, I agree. Thank you so much, Guy, for all the words of wisdom and sharing your journey with all of us, and being part of my journey as well. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Vandana, for joining the Snyk journey and for having me on here. And I hope some people find the wrong grades of wisdom from this one.
I'm sure. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to reach out to you, know more about what's happening in the recent times, and what's going to happen in the future with AI. I'm sure about that.
Sounds good.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us. And thank you, Guy, for joining me.
Thank you.